3 spine-chilling accounts. Unexplained horrors security guards discovered on the job. Tom's heart raced as he navigated through the desolate streets of Maplewood. Shadows loomed over the once cheerful houses, the glow of streetlights flickering like dying stars. The world outside his car felt wrong, too silent, too still. His daughter Lily's laugh echoed in his mind, a bittersweet reminder of why he was heading to the abandoned Maplewood Mall, a relic of happier times. He clenched the steering wheel, pushing down the mounting unease. "Just paycheck, Tom. Just a paycheck," he muttered under his breath. When he arrived, the mall's entrance gaped at him like a black mouth waiting to swallow him whole. Inside, dust hung in the air, illuminated by flickering fluorescent lights. His fellow security guards, Janet and Marcus, had seen better days, their faces etched with the weight of years spent in this forgotten place. They greeted him with forced smiles, sharing weary stories of the mall's decline. But as laughter broke free, it felt like it was trapped in a ghostly portrait, the walls almost listening in on their banter. At first, the trickle of whispers felt like a cruel joke. "Tom," they seemed to call, distorted and echoing from darkened stores. "It's nothing," he reassured himself, but the hairs on his neck stood on end. He exchanged quick glances with Janet and Marcus. Their strained smiles echoed his own discomfort. Strange shadows danced by the corners of his vision, slipping out of reach as soon as he turned to face them, twisting fear into tangible shapes. A cacophony erupted from the food court around midnight. Laughter, bright, innocent, mingled with desperate cries, echoing through the silence like phantom music. Tom's instincts kicked in. Flashlight raised, he bounded towards the sound, adrenaline pumping. But as they rounded the corner, reality crashed over them. The food court lay draped in dust, chairs toppled over, but the sounds had stopped like a record scratched to silence. Their breath quickened, the air thick with the sense of being watched. Their own shadows became sinister figures in the dim light. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As they pressed on, the walls whispered secrets, swirling with dread. Faded posters of missing children hung unceremoniously on peeling walls like ghostly warnings. A knot tightened in Tom's stomach. Familiar names stung his memory. The voices swirled around him, echoing the lost and forgotten victims of this forsaken place. Suddenly they stumbled upon a hidden room, its door slightly ajar, darkness beckoning from within. The whispers grew louder, seductive and sinister, luring him closer. Dread seeped into his bones, a primal instinct screaming for him to run. But what if they were drawing him in to reveal something that had been buried long ago? The darkness waited, hunger in its embrace. Could they truly escape the malevolence lurking in their own community before it claimed another soul? Pushing the door open, Tom felt the chill of the room wash over him. It felt like stepping into a freezer, the air thick with something rotten. Deep shadows clung to the corners, wrapping around the edges like fingers creeping into his thoughts. "What the hell is this place?" Marcus whispered, his voice trembling. The room was cluttered with remnants of a past life. Old toys, torn clothing, and cracked mirrors that reflected their brave but terrified faces. A low hum filled the atmosphere, vibrating through their bones. Tom's flashlight beam flickered across the walls, revealing faded photographs. Faces of children stared back, eyes wide with terror, forever caught in moments of pure dread. "Turn it off," Janet urged, clutching her arms as if to ward off the chill. But it wasn't the temperature that made her shiver. It was the palpable sense of despair that hung thick in the air. "We should leave, now." But Tom felt rooted. Something pulled him forward, a magnetic force that beckoned him deeper into the darkness. He took a step, ignoring Janet's plea, moving toward a stack of boxes in the corner. Something felt urgent, as if the very fabric of this place was unraveling, and he needed to expose its truths. "Tom, please," Marcus said, his voice unnaturally high pitch. "This isn't right." Ignoring their hesitation, he pried open one of the boxes. Inside, he found a collection of tattered journals, pages stained and ripped. As he flipped through them, his heart dropped. The entries were frantic, detailing lives abruptly cut short, screams in the night, shadows at the edge of sight, and the same name repeated over and over: the Whisperer. Suddenly the whispers grew louder, a cacophony spinning around him, pulling at his sanity. "Help us! Find us!" they moaned, crescendoing into a chilling symphony of pain. The air grew thick and suffocating, and Tom staggered back, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread crash into him. Janet grabbed his sleeve. "Tom, we need to go, now!" But before he could respond, a faint glow began to pulse from the far wall, drawing his reluctant gaze. An old projector whirred to life, casting flickering images onto the peeling paint. He turned to see a film of the mall, families laughing, children playing, and then a flash of something darker. A figure loomed in the background, its features twisted and grotesque. He stumbled back, wide-eyed. What is that? What does it want? The images fizzled, the sounds distorting. The whispers morphed, shifting from pleas to raging screams. At that moment, Tom felt the temperature plummet further. Whatever was watching, whatever lurked in this darkness, was angry. "We need to leave," Janet shouted, yanking him toward the door. But it slammed shut in an icy gust, trapping them inside. The hum escalated into shrieks, the air crackling with raw energy. "What do we do?" Marcus yelled, panic breaking his voice. All at once, the whispers coalesced into one terrifying command, echoing in their minds. "Stay. Forever." There, amidst the crumbling debris, the walls pulsed with a sinister hunger. They were not alone. Behind them, a shadow shifted, wide and hulking, blending with the darkness. Tom turned in horror, feeling the presence close in, its breath cold and rancid. Something primal twisted in his gut. Fight or flight. "Run!" he screamed, but his feet felt like they were glued to the ground. The shadow loomed larger, and he couldn't shake the suffocating dread. Would they ever escape this nightmare, or had they stumbled into a trap set long ago? Just as fear gnawed at his sanity, a deafening crash erupted from below, a shattering timbre that echoed through the halls, causing the walls to tremble. Was it their salvation, or was it merely the beginning of something much worse? In that instant, Tom knew. The real horror of Maplewood Mall was just beginning. The walls shook again, another ominous rumble resonating through the crumbled mall. Each tremor felt like fingers of doom threatening to grasp them tighter. Tom's heart raced as they all exchanged terrified glances, the reality of their situation dawning like a heavy fog. "What was that?" Marcus whispered, his voice cracking. Just a pipe or something," Tom stammered, but the quiver in his voice betrayed his own fear. "Right," Janet said, eyes darting around the room. "Let's not stick around to find out." But the door remained unyielding, firm against Tom's frantic slamming. They were trapped. Anxiety clawed at his throat, and he felt a wave of despair wash over him. The whispering grew stronger, imbued with chaos. "Stay, forever." The shadow lurked just beyond the edge of the light, malevolent and stretching, almost tasting their fear. Tom felt a chill seep deeper into his bones. He knew instinctively that whatever it was wanted them close enough to feel its icy breath. A loud crash shattered the moment, shaking the shelves with such force that they nearly toppled. "Over there," Tom shouted, pointing to a narrow opening behind the boxes. "We can squeeze through. Come on." He led the way, pushing past the tattered relics of lives once lived, the weight of their sadness almost suffocating. Janet was right on his heels, tugging Marcus along, but the scratchy whispers escalated into a frenzy. "Help us! Help us!" they begged, a choir of anguished souls whose pain echoed through Tom's mind. The very air felt alive, squirming and binding around them. As they squeezed through the cramped space, Tom caught a glimpse of the shadow solidifying behind them, swirls of darkness twisting into grotesque shapes. It was angry, and Tom's skin crawled as he imagined its foul hands reaching for him. He dove through the gap, landing hard on the damp ground just as he heard the threatening snarl behind him. "Don't look back!" Janet screamed, but his instinct was to turn, just one last glance. In that moment, he saw it. A face contorted and ghastly, with hollow eyes that seemed to reflect endless terror. Tom's blood ran cold. The face twisted into a terrible grin, revealing jagged teeth that dripped with shadowy malice. "Run!" he shouted, adrenaline surging through him as they scrambled to their feet. They darted down a hall, the buzzing energy around them flaring like furious fireworks. The further they went, the louder the whispers became, a tangled horde of voices begging for release, clawing at their sanity. They rounded a corner, spotting an emergency exit far down the dimly lit corridor. "Almost there," Marcus gasped, desperation fueling each step. But the deeper they went, the gusts of cold wind nailed them like icy currents, and the whispers shifted again, transforming into taunting laughter that echoed madly, reverberating off the walls. They reached the exit, but just as Tom grasped the door handle, it flew open, revealing a blinding light that momentarily blinded him. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, a child. "Help," the child whimpered, but as quickly as the light came, it dimmed again, revealing the specter of despair. The silhouette morphed, twisting into a grotesque parody of a child's form, a hollow echo of innocence. Tom felt the grip of horror close around his throat. "Get away from him!" he yelled, instinctively stepping forward, as if to protect whatever remnants of childhood remained. But the figure grinned again, hunger glistening in its hollow gaze. The laughter returned, and from deep within the shadows, something else stirred, a presence that held ambition beyond mere fright. "Stay. Forever," it mocked again. As the shadow lunged, Tom realized it was too late to save anyone. With an explosion of adrenaline, he bolted through the blazing doorway, Janet and Marcus right behind him. But freedom slipped just beyond their grasp. This was only the beginning. What awaited them on the other side was more terrifying than they'd ever imagined. What truth would they uncover, and could they survive long enough to confront it? They stumbled into a different world the moment they crossed the threshold. The blinding light vanished, replaced by an eerie twilight that clung to the air like a fog of despair. The hairs on the back of Tom's neck prickled, and he instinctively stepped closer to Janet and Marcus. The landscape stretched before them, a twisted reflection of the mall they had fled. Stores lined the street, but their windows were shattered, and the floors inside were littered with debris. "What is this place?" Marcus breathed, his voice trembling. I don't know," Tom stammered, "but we have to keep moving." As they moved farther into the shadowy mall, a cold wind swept through the corridors, and the whispers grew more distinct, wrapping around them like a storm. The same chorus of cries from before, twisted with outrage. "Help us! Help us!" "We can't help them," Janet shouted over the rising cadence, almost pleading. "We can't." Her panic was palpable, making Tom's pulse race faster. "What are we supposed to do then?" Marcus replied, desperate. "If we keep running, we could end up back where we started." "Maybe the exit opens back up if we find the right way," Tom suggested, his determination overshadowed by doubt. He wished he could feel the adrenaline pushing him forward, but the dread of the surrounding darkness seemed heavier than the fear of whatever lurked behind. They pressed on, dodging glass shards and leaning against crumbling walls. The flicker of a fluorescent bulb overhead cast long shadows that danced with an unsettling life of their own. Each snap of a broken floorboard sent jolts of fear through Tom, echoing in his ears like a countdown to disaster. Then a sudden noise made them freeze, a sound that was neither whisper nor laughter, but something deeper, an anguished wail that twisted and turned, sounding more human than they dared admit. "It's coming from there." Marcus pointed toward a store with its entrance gaping, darkness swirling inside like a hungry mouth. "Are you insane?" Janet hissed, eyes wide with terror. "We shouldn't go in there." I don't think we have a choice. It could lead out, Tom shouted back, even though his own argument felt weak. He knew they couldn't stay here. Reluctantly, they stepped toward the store. As they crossed the threshold, a rush of icy air wrapped around them. The interior was a graveyard of mannequins, their glassy eyes staring blankly, hollow expressions frozen in time. Keep your head down, Tom warned, scanning the empty aisles cautiously. The air reeked of decay, mercifully. There were no cries, but that did nothing to ease the tension in the room. They moved through the aisles, heartbeats drumming in sync with a dreadful sense of foreboding. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from behind them. They spun around, breathless. The store's entrance had slammed shut. Panic set in and Tom raced towards it, but it wouldn't budge. "Help!" Janet screamed, pounding on the door. "Let us out!" "We're not trapped," Tom declared, trying to mask the fear clutching his throat. "We can find another way." But before he could lead them further, the mannequins in the shop began to shift, slowly, almost fluidly. Their blank eyes seemed to fill with malicious intent. "Look!" Marcus shouted, backing away. One mannequin stepped off its stand, its limbs unnaturally jerky, moving like a puppet whose strings were tangled. Behind it, the others began to follow, their heads turning as though aware of their quarry. "Run! Now!" Tom yelled, fear flooding through every vein. They turned to dash deeper into the store, but the path twisted and warped around them. Every step felt heavier, wrapped in slow-moving dread. The whispers crescendoed, merging with the wails of the mannequins, and Tom realized it was happening again. The borders of reality were fraying. "Where do we go?" Janet cried, tears streaking down her face. "We need to find something, anything, a way out of this." Suddenly, a flash of light caught his eye, a small glimmer at the back of the store. Hope surged as he led them toward it, but the laughter returned, louder now, beckoning, anticipating their every move. Just then, the ground trembled violently beneath their feet, and darkness surged up from the floor, engulfing their ankles like grasping hands. "Tom!" Marcus cried, his eyes wide in dawning horror. "What's happening?" The world around them began to fade as a chilling voice echoed in their minds, sultry and playful. Stay. Forever. Would they succumb to the shadows? Or could they uncover the twisted truth holding them captive? As the darkness closed in, Tom felt despair coil tighter around his heart, the inexorable grip of whatever haunted this place suffocating his hope. But in the depths of the unknown, something was stirring. A flicker of defiance. A flicker of light. Would they find their escape, or was this the end? As they were pulled further into the void, one question lingered. What horrors awaited them next? The darkness tightened around them, like a vice clenching their wills. Tom felt his feet sink deeper, the grip of the shadows mocking his every desperate attempt to pull away. Panic clawed at his throat. "Fight it!" he screamed, the words tasting bitter as they left his lips. Janet and Marcus were still there, mere silhouettes against the encroaching blackness. He turned, voice tremoring. "We can't let it take us." They looked at him, their eyes wide, reflecting the thin sliver of light shimmering just beyond reach. With a surge of adrenaline coursing through him, Tom pushed against the shadows, refusing to let fear swallow him whole. "We're going to find that light," he gasped, launching himself toward the flickering gleam. The moment they moved, the laughter intensified, mocking their struggle. It echoed off the walls, a cacophony of voices that seemed to slither through the air, each note tainted with malevolence. Spirits twisted in the growing dimness, lurking just beyond perception, their wails a reminder of the price of failure. As they ran, the arched ceiling of the store closed in, beams like bared teeth ready to bite. Tom stumbled, barely catching himself against a row of mannequins that stood watch. For a second, he felt the cold, glassy eyes of the nearest one boring into his soul, as if it could see the fear pounding in his heart. "Tom, we need to keep going," Marcus yelled, tugging at his sleeve. He shot forward, drawing on every ounce of strength. The light ahead flickered more insistently, a knowledge that could lead them out. With a forceful kick, he launched himself from the grasping shadows and slammed into the wall of mannequins. They toppled like dominoes, their bodies crashing to the floor with sickening thuds. "Move!" Janet urged, squeezing past the wreckage. They dashed toward the light, each step echoing with the haunting laughter behind them. Tom's heart thundered, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The whispers twisted, half-formed words mixing in a grotesque melody. "Stay. Forever." They burst into the light. It enveloped them in a warm glow, and for a moment it felt surreal, as if the shadows were mere figments of a nightmare. But outside the store, things were no better. An endless expanse of desolation stretched before them, a mall that was now a graveyard filled with broken walls and echoes of forgotten lives. Everything looked familiar, yet wrong. The stores bore names he recognized, yet they were painted in cruel irony. "Scanning," whispered an overhead speaker, its tone flat, devoid of warmth. "What now?" Marcus panted, looking from one side to the other. "Find safety," Tom insisted, but the phrase felt weak. The air shimmered, distorting reality, and characters wandered the outskirts as faceless shadows roaming aimlessly, lost souls trapped in agony. The path ahead shattered, revealing holes like gaping wounds. To their left, the flickering lights above spelled a warning, a neon sign sputtering, flashing, "Exit." "Look," Janet pointed, dread pooling in her stomach. But as they approached, a face emerged from the darkness, a twisted visage grinning in anticipation. Tom's breath hitched as the figure started to move. Shifting, flickering like a faulty bulb, it whispered, "You can't escape. No one ever has." "What do we do?" Janet screamed, fear escalating, eyes darting toward the figure. Suddenly the shadows re-emerged, writhing like a tempest, sweeping toward them in hunger. "Run!" Marcus shouted again, but the vaporous darkness seemed to lift, pulling them apart. Tom fought to hold on to his friends as they were torn from him, his own scream swallowed by the cacophony rising around them. Despair clung heavily to him, smothering his breath. "No, Janet, Marcus!" But the shadows were too quick, pulling him further into their grasp. He felt himself slipping, his fingers brushing against the light but never quite grasping it. "Don't leave me." He was losing them, losing himself. And just as everything seemed lost, the laughter shifted, morphing into a wail, one that thawed the darkness, revealing a doorway shimmering beyond. It pulsed with anticipation. "Tom!" Janet's voice broke through the clamoring chaos, filled with both pain and hope. With a last surge of will, he forced himself toward that glimmering door. Could it be the way out? Or was it another trap, another snare crafted by the shadows? The question loomed over him as he lunged forward, grasping desperately at the flickering light. Would he step into salvation or doom? And as the shadows closed in again, one might ask, what would it take to break free from this malevolent snare? Tom felt an electric pulse as he launched himself toward the shimmering doorway, driven by a blend of hope and terror. With every fiber of his being, he pushed through the fragmenting darkness around him. But just as he reached for the glow, a vice-like grip snagged his ankle. He stumbled, the spectral laughter rising to a deafening crescendo. "No!" he cried out, twisting in a desperate struggle to free himself. The shadows coiled tighter, a slithering mass intent on dragging him back. "Tom!" Janet's voice pierced through the overlapping chaos. It was a beacon amid the din, yet the distance between them felt insurmountable. He could see her, her face a mask of horror, trapped in a sea of shifting darkness, perilously close to joining him. "Hold on, I'm coming!" he shouted, his voice cracking under straining urgency. With a final thrust, he broke free from the clutches, lunging through the doorway as the shadows writhed behind him. He tumbled onto the other side, gasping, the sensation of warmth and light filling his lungs. Yet once inside, the light flickered erratically, casting ominous shadows that danced along the walls. Tom pushed himself up, disoriented, scanning the area. He was alone. Panic surged. Where were Janet and Marcus? "Janet!" he called, voice trembling. "Marcus!" The sound echoed back to him, a haunting reminder of his solitude. The room was a sterile, white space, devoid of life yet oppressive in its emptiness. Monitors lined the walls, displaying static images and distorted figures that morphed under his gaze. Each screen pulsed like a heartbeat, flickering in and out, sometimes flashing grotesque faces twisted in anguish, their silent screams stretching toward him. "Focus," he muttered to himself. "You need to find them." He staggered toward the nearest monitor, its screen casting an eerie glow. The image shifted. It was the mall, but distorted, decayed. Shadows danced in the corners of the screens, dark figures creeping, lurking, searching. He gulped. They were searching for him. Each step he took felt like wading through thick glue as dread settled in his stomach. Outside he could hear the faint echoes of laughter, a cruel reminder of the darkness that still loomed, waiting for him to falter. "Tom." The voice was soft, almost a whisper, pouring out from the corner of the room. He turned sharply, catching sight of a flickering shadow that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the monitors. It distorted, elongating, morphing into a figure that resembled Janet, but with eyes filled with despair and mouths twisting into silent screams. "Janet," he called, taking cautious steps closer. "Help us," the apparition breathed, her features slackening, sadness spilling over like a broken dam. Just as Tom reached out, the shadow pulled back, vanishing into the flickering static. "No!" he yelled, panic clawing at his chest. He whipped around, looking for any sign of Marcus, but the room remained eerily silent. Suddenly, the overhead speakers crackled to life with a cold, mechanical voice. "Scanning for subjects. Subjects detected." Fear spiked in his veins, a raw terror that paralyzed him. Subjects? Are we the subjects? He spun, desperate to find an exit, to escape this void of unending dread. A door slid open quietly behind him, an invitation laced with danger, and he hesitated only for a moment before charging through. The hallway beyond was shrouded in shadows similar to those outside, and the laughter returned, this time closer, more personal. He felt himself getting swallowed by darkness again, as whispers rose like a tide. "Can you find them? Will you let them go?" Every step echoed louder than the last, his heart thundering in his ears as he pressed forward. But the question gnawed at him. What price would he pay for their salvation? He barreled through the hallway, glancing back once to see shadowy figures emerging behind him, their faces twisted in agony as they reached out for him. "I won't let them take me again!" he screamed, forcing himself to run faster. Suddenly, a new door appeared in front of him, glowing with an otherworldly light. Would he gamble on one last chance? Or would this lead him further into the grasp of the nightmare? The pulse of fear quickened, and with one last breath Tom lunged toward the light. Would he find his friends on the other side or face an even darker fate? Tom burst through the glowing door, his breath hitching in his throat as he stumbled into another stark room. This one was smaller, but filled with shadows that seemed thicker, darker, almost alive. The walls pulsed as if the very structure were breathing. A flickering bulb above cast a shaky light, cutting through the fog of fear, but never allowing him to feel completely safe. "Janet," he called, but all he heard was the echo of his own voice mingling with the sinister whispers that floated around him. They taunted, they teased, they promised horrors he dared not imagine. Heart racing, he pressed against one of the walls, searching for any kind of exit or clue. What kind of place was this? Where had he landed? Then he noticed it. There, behind a cracked window, stood a reflection not of himself, but of darkness. Shadows writhed and pulled apart, revealing shapes he instinctively recognized. Janet's face appeared briefly, distorted and trapped, as if she were pressed against the glass from the other side. He could see desperation in her eyes, a pleading that sank deep into his heart. "Tom." Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Instead, the whispers grew louder, drowning out his name, twisting into a cacophony. "Find her. Let her go." "No," he screamed, fists tightening against the wall, rage and fear conflating in his gut. He took a step forward. Pulsing hands reached out from the shadows, clawing for him, their fingers ethereal, yet sharp with need. "Leave. Leave." The shadows around him shifted, becoming denser, swirling like a storm. and Tom stumbled back, heart in his throat. He backed away until he hit the corner, trapped like prey. He couldn't stay here. He had to find Janet and Marcus. Turning on his heel, instinct drove him forward past the taunting whispers. As he dashed through the room, he spotted another exit, a door at the far end, barely visible behind the veil of shifting gloom. He sprinted toward it, taste of terror thick on his tongue. Just as he reached for the handle, a piercing scream erupted from behind him. It was Janet's voice, raw with agony. "Tom, don't leave me." He hesitated, breathless, torn between flight and the instinct to save her. But as he glanced back, the reflection in the glass shifted again, revealing monstrous faces, gnashing teeth, and hollow eyes full of immeasurable pain. They reached for him, their grasping hands stretching further, pulling at the edges of this reality. "Help us, please!" The cacophony turned frantic, voices overlapping, desperate. "Tom, please!" Janet's voice, faint but clear, pierced through the madness. He felt himself struggling to decide, heart pounding. He knew the price, his freedom for their safety. "No!" he shouted, determination rising like fire in his veins. He couldn't. He wouldn't join them. With adrenaline surging, he twisted the knob and flung the door open. The sound echoed, a dreadful reminder of the stakes. On the other side was a narrow staircase spiraling downward into what looked like absolute darkness, a gaping maw ready to swallow him whole. "Tom!" The scream resonated again, nated. The shadows writhed behind him, urging him back. He felt their gnawing, desperate pull, but he couldn't turn back. He dove into the staircase, plunging into the abyss, every instinct screaming for him to get out, get away. But where would that lead him? The stairs crumbled beneath him as he descended into unknown terror, and still that haunting question reverberated in his mind. Could he really save them, or was he willingly walking into his own doom? The further down he went, the more the walls seemed to pulse and breathe, closing in tighter. Would he find light, or would this descent lead to darkness's ultimate embrace? As the last flicker of light disappeared behind him, he felt the shadows thickening and knew he was being watched. What horrors awaited him in the depths? In the enveloping darkness, the answer loomed like a shadow ready to strike. Tom's heart pounded as he descended further into the suffocating shadows, the air thick with a stale, oppressive weight that clawed at his lungs. Each step echoed in the void, the sound swallowed immediately by the darkness. The flickering bulb above him had long been extinguished, leaving him to navigate by instinct alone. Then a sharp whisper sliced through the silence. "Help us!" The voice was chillingly familiar, but when he strained to listen, it slipped through his grasp like smoke. Tom stumbled, placing a shaky hand against the wall for balance. It felt cold, damp, and almost alive. He squeezed his eyes shut and focused on breathing. He couldn't allow himself to panic. Panic would be his undoing. But behind his eyelids, shadows began to form. Flickering images danced like shadows cast by flames. Faces twisted in anguish, their mouths stitched shut as if silenced by an unseen force. Tom gasped as one walked closer, its hollow eyes boring into him, the pain within them palpable. "What do you want?" he shouted, voice breaking. The thing paused for a heartbeat, and then it raised a hand, pointing deeper into the abyss. "Tom," Janet's voice echoed faintly, a thread woven through the fabric of despair that surrounded him. It pulled him forward, urging him deeper into the black. "Where are you?" he called out, every ounce of hope flooding his words. He hesitated at the edge of a landing that opened into an enormous chamber, a pit of dark nothingness. The air hung heavy, as if the shadows themselves bore weight. The whispering intensified, echoing off unseen walls, layering with urgency and despair. She's here, free her!" "Janet!" he cried, stepping into the chamber. It felt enormous, swallowing every shred of sound, every breath. Then the glimmer of something shiny caught his eye, a beam of light piercing the darkness. It beckoned him like a beacon, and he felt his heart quicken with fear and hope intertwined. He moved cautiously toward it, the shadows pulling at his ankles like chains. The closer he got, the more he saw. A figure locked in feeble thrashing, encased within a crystalline barrier that glimmered in the faint light. Tom. It was her. His heart soared as he rushed closer. But as he reached the crystal, the air thickened. Ice-cold tendrils snaked around his throat, squeezing tightly. "Help! Me!" she gasped, her features flickering, hinting at a growing darkness seeping into her essence. "No, I won't lose you!" Tom shouted, summoning every bit of his strength. He pressed his hands against the barrier, feeling a searing heat pulse through it, clashing with the shadows wrapping around him. The whispers escalated to a deafening roar, their demands relentless. "Join us! She belongs to us!" "Get away!" Tom cried. With a surge of determination, he slammed his fist against the barrier. The impact made him stagger back, the icy grip on his throat loosening just enough. But the shadows were quick to retaliate. They surged forward like a wave, cold and encompassing. Panic washed over him as he fought against them, struggling to visualize a way out. A plan. "Tom, please." The desperation in Janet's voice tightened around him, sharpening his resolve. What would it cost him to shatter this glassy prison? "Hold on," he shouted, rearing back again, willing himself to gather the courage needed to break through. He could feel the presence closing in, the air chilling, pulling the life from him. Everything hung in the balance. Could he turn the tide and save her? Or would they both be swallowed by the abyss? As Tom prepared to strike again, a crude, shrieking laughter echoed from the depths of the chamber, freezing his heart in terror. "Foolish boy, you can't take her back." In that instant, the chamber dimmed further, shadows condensing into monstrous forms that crept along the walls, ready to consume him whole. Would he be able to save Janet before the darkness claimed them both? The answer loomed just out of reach, taunting him. Tom inhaled sharply, fear clawing at his throat as the chilling laughter reverberated in his ears. The shadows lurked closer, their twisted forms writhing and swirling like smoke around a flame. They had substance now, and he could feel their breath, icy and jagged against his skin. "Tom!" Janet's voice was thick with desperation, nearly swallowed by the chaos. He could sense the urgency behind her words, like a distant lighthouse flickering on a stormy night. Panic surged through him again. He couldn't lose her. Not now. Not after everything they had fought through together. Gritting his teeth, he shifted his weight and aimed another desperate blow at the barrier. "Get away from her!" he charged, fear fueling his strength. But the moment he struck, a blinding flash erupted from the crystal. Images streamed through his mind. Moments they shared, dreams they nurtured. Then came the laughter again, now louder, sharper, filled with malice. "You think love can break the bonds of darkness?" Tom recoiled, the crystal glowing fiercely, illuminating his surroundings. For a fleeting moment he glimpsed the faces of the damned. Their mouths were stitched shut, eyes wide with terror. They were lost souls, trapped for eternity, and he could see shadows flicking behind them, waiting, hungry. "Join us," they mouthed soundlessly, their faces contorting in silent screams. "No, I won't," he rambled, his voice trembling. "I'll save her." The room spun as he grounded himself, determination infusing every syllable he spoke. Even as he was consumed by dread, he felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. "Janet, I'm here." Her voice echoed stronger now, ripping through the cacophony of whispers and dread. "I can feel you. Please." The shadows were relentless, however. They lunged towards him, sharp tendrils whipping at his arms and legs, dragging him back toward the pit of despair. Tom's heart raced as he fought against their icy grip. "No!" he shouted, summoning every ounce of willpower he possessed. He took a deep breath, focusing on the glowing crystal before him. "Janet, I'm coming." He closed his eyes and envisioned the barrier, visualizing it shattering like glass, her freedom woven into the essence of every longing they had ever shared. The weight of despair pressed down harder, but he pushed against it. Just a little more. When he opened his eyes again, a crack had formed in the barrier. The light pulsed, drawing the shadows back for just a moment. Time stretched as he reached forward, not caring about the pain, the cold, the darkness closing in on him. "Please." The shriek of laughter was now replaced by something darker, a wailing that pierced through the chamber. A chill ran down Tom's spine as he felt a hand grip his ankle, something cold and wet that slithered, pulling him down. "Foolish boy," the voice hissed, blending with the anguish. "You think you can save her?" With desperation surging through him, he hurled himself against the barrier again, the crystal surface beginning to shimmer and shake. Splintered shards of light flew toward the creeping darkness. Rage boiled within him. "Get away from her!" Finally, with one last earth-shattering blow, the crystal exploded in a dazzling display of light, sending shockwaves through the chamber. Tom felt himself being thrust backward, the shadows screaming as their grasp faltered. But all at once everything went silent. He was thrown into a disorienting void. Coldness wrapped around him, and he couldn't tell which way was up or down. And then a voice slipped in through the dark, calm and resolute. "Tom, it's not over. You made a choice." In the shadows lingered more than just echoes of pain. Something sinister stirred, something that watched him closely, waiting for the moment to strike. Would this be the end of their struggle, or had Tom opened a door best left shut? The answer lingered just beyond the edge of darkness, taunting him as he fought to regain his footing. Tom felt the cold slide away as clarity rushed back in, the void yielding to a familiar warmth. His eyes fluttered open, almost blinded by blinding white light. He was lying on the ground, gasping for breath, the remnants of shadow swirling just beyond his peripheral vision. "Tom!" The voice jolted him upright. Janet stood there, a silhouette against the brightness, her expression a mixture of relief and disbelief. Marcus was beside her, clutching his arm and wide-eyed. "Are we alive?" Tom croaked, rolling onto his knees. I think so," Janet stammered, her voice trembling. "But where are we?" Tom blinked, squinting at their surroundings. They were all in a small white room with sterile walls. Monitors lined the perimeter, this one devoid of the torment they'd witnessed before. No flickering images, no ghastly faces. Just peace. "What just happened?" Marcus murmured, looking around. The weight of the ordeal sank in, but the air felt lighter. Somehow, they had escaped. "I don't know," Tom admitted, tears pooling in his eyes. "But we did it. We broke the barrier. We're free." The darkness that had surrounded them started to funnel away, retreats like an ebbing tide. For the first time, Tom felt like they had won a battle, though a nagging worry still settled over him like a heavy cloak. "What about the others?" Janet asked, her voice a whisper. "The ones who are trapped? What about the shadows? Maybe we can still help them," Tom said, though deep down he feared what might be lurking in the dark corners of that mall. "We need to find a way out of here and back to the mall. We have to set them free." Suddenly, alarms blared in the background, cutting through their moment of reprieve. The room pulsed with urgency as red lights flashed, and the walls began to tremble, as if the decision-making process of this facility was in chaos. "Let's move," Tom urged, racing toward a door at the far end of the room. They pushed through, the echoes of their hurried footsteps creating a rhythm of panic. When they emerged into a long, dimly lit hallway, the air carried a sense of urgency. "Do you think we could—" Marcus started, but before he could finish, the mechanical voice echoed through the hall. "Subjects located. Initiating containment procedure." "Run!" Tom shouted, adrenaline flooding his veins. They sprinted through the corridor, its walls shifting subtly as they dashed, the whirring of machinery like an ominous heartbeat clamoring behind them. They reached a door marked Exit, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged anew, and Tom slammed his fists against the metal. "We have to get out! We have to get back!" "We can't let this place keep feeding on others," Janet insisted, gripping his arm. Suddenly the door swung open. A gust of wind rushed past, the air thick with scents of decay and dust. They stepped outside into the night, the moon hanging eerily above the dilapidated Maplewood Mall. "It's still here," Marcus breathed, eyes widening. The mall stood before them, ancient and foreboding, shimmering with ghostly whispers beckoning them. "Let's end this once and for all," Tom resolved, the weight of their shared fear igniting a fire in his soul. They tread cautiously toward the entrance, the weight of dread draping over them like a shroud. Shadows rattled in the corners, but they stepped inside anyway. As they ventured deeper into the forsaken structure, the ghostly whispers escalated, materials ripping from walls, guiding him toward a familiar path. The darkness pulsed with intensity, echoing their presence. Stay. Forever. No! Tom shouted, the memories of his frantic fight flooding back to him. He could feel the agony etched in the walls, wanting to smother them again. Instead of fleeing, he forged ahead, straining against the fear. Each step felt deliberate, purposeful. They descended further into the bowels of the mall, drawn to the core of the darkness. The crystal chamber now a haunting memory, echoing its former allure. Tom, are you sure about this? Janet's voice trembled as they reached the threshold of darkness. He nodded, steely determination lining his gaze. I'm done running. It's time to face it. It's time for the truth. With that, they stepped forward, a united front against the shadows that swirled around. The echoes of lost voices rose to a fever pitch, a cacophony of families, children, and souls longing for liberation. Help us. Find us, and the whispers begged, their sounds mingling with heart-wrenching cries. Tom clenched his fists, summoning all his strength. Listen, we're here to help you. We won't leave you behind. The shadows flickered, paused, and for a heartbeat the cries ceased. Then a surge of warmth flooded the space. The faces of lost souls materialized, desperate yet hopeful. Together, Janet echoed, squeezing Marcus's arm. And in that moment, an incandescent glow enveloped them. They braced themselves, preparing for a unified confrontation against the darkness that had hunted them. Whatever awaited them, they would face it together. No more running. They would fight for every voice that had been silenced, for every soul longing for peace. As the shadows swirled and the cries crescendoed, the chamber vibrated with energy. The darkness, for the first time, felt vulnerable. Hope sparked as the trio pressed onward, ready to unearth the truth and reclaim the light buried beneath an ocean of despair. This was their moment, and they would seize it. The whispers chimed a different tune, growing softer. Help us. Help us. With a steely resolve, Tom squeezed Janet and Marcus's hands tightly. Let's go, he breathed, stepping into the luminous unknown where the shadows would falter, where the light would finally break through. And with that rallying call, a new dawn began to wash over Maplewood Mall, a dawn filled with whispers of hope, forever echoing into the light. Now this is where you come in. You need to subscribe now to catch our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. What do you think will happen next? Let's hear your thoughts. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. Your support means the world. Let's keep the story going together.